So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 17th cybersec.lunch and the third digital event. My name is Stefan Andreas Kastorf. I'm editor-publisher of the Tagesspiegel, and I'm happy to welcome you. What is the cybersec.lunch? The cybersec.lunch is a regular format held by the Tagesspiegel where pressing issues regarding digital security are discussed over lunch. And thanks to the Bundesdruckerei, because they are facilitating the dialogues. Thanks very much. And we come to Antonia Maas later on. Yeah, and who are you? The audience. The audience is you, and the audience is comprised of political decision makers at the federal and state level, bloggers, IT professionals, companies, administration consultants, journalists, CTOs, CIOs, startup scene, IT scientists, organizations, NGOs. And what is the aim? The aim is to create a solid network. Today's topic is Germany's EU Council Presidency, progress for the digital sovereignty of the EU, question mark. And today's speakers are Kim Jorgensen, Head of Cabinet, European Commission, and Pia Karger from the Federal Ministry of the Interior. I come back to this. But before we start, we hear Antonia Maas and give her a chance to welcome the audience and the speaker. Antonia Maas is Head of Communications and Public Affairs of the Bundesdruckerei. Antonia Maas, please.
Hi, and welcome to the 17th edition of cybersec.lunch. We are pleased to welcome you again this time. On 1st of July, Germany took over the presidency of the Council of the European Union for 6 months. The presidency was highly influenced by the still ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. However, even before everything went upside down because of the pandemic, it was of utmost importance that the European Union adjust its laws and regulations in order to achieve a digital single market and further its independence internationally. We at Bundesdruckerei have been following these debates about digital sovereignty with great interest, and we see much movement on the European level. The Digital Services Act and the reviewed eIDAS regulation will lay out the foundation for the introduction of a European digital identity and a more suitable regulation of online platforms. With the Data Governance Act, the European Commission aims to establish European data spaces. It will enhance data sharing mechanisms across the EU and will introduce common standards. Although much progress has been made in the last 6 months, there are still important questions to be answered. How can European digital standards get worldwide attention and acceptance? What contribution could the German EU Council Presidency make to the digital sovereignty of the European Union? And what will be the next milestone on our way towards more digital sovereignty? We are trying to find initial answers to these questions today and look forward to an exciting and lively discussion. Thank you very much.
And again, Stefan again. Let's come back to the topic and the speakers. German EU Council Presidency, progress for the digital sovereignty of the EU, question mark. As you all know, on July 1st this year, Germany took over the presidency of the Council of the European Union for 6 months. The focus of the German presidency lies on coping with the COVID-19 pandemic, as Antonia just said, with digitalisation taking center stage as one of the factors of crisis management. The strengthening of digital sovereignty is laid down in the program of the EU Council Presidency as a leitmotif, as we call it, of the European digital policy. On this basis, the federal government wants to expedite a European data strategy together with data infrastructure, define and legally secure common European data space, disclose and regulate platforms and their algorithms more transparently, and launch a European digital identity. We come back to this. What is it? European digital identity. To facilitate digital networking and the use of technologies in different sectors, such as mobility and healthcare, safely and vividly, Germany and France are advancing with Gaia-X as a European cloud infrastructure system. data and services are to be made collectively available, aggregated, and shared based on trust. What does it mean? We have to discuss it. So, and now we hear two inputs, one from Kim Jorgensen and one from Pia Kaga. Kim Jorgensen, he is head of cabinet of the Vice President of the European Commission, Margrethe Vestager. He has been a diplomat, has held various positions in the diplomatic service of Denmark. He was, for example, State Secretary, he was Undersecretary for Europe, he was Danish ambassador to Turkey, France, and Germany. He was ambassador to Brussels, to the EU, and now is, as I said, head of the cabinet of Margrethe Vestager. Pia Kaga has all her life has something to do with IT as a consultant, now in the Federal Ministry of the Interior, and she is she's head of the Department of Digital Society and Information Technology. That means she is Director General. I'm happy to hear what she has to say, because in a bit is something about Germany's presidency. So let's start with Kim. The floor is yours. 3 minutes to go. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and also thanks for the invitation. As was said, COVID has shown the need for more priority on digitalization and also to have a much stronger European presence in supply chain.
Hey, can you say that again?
Sorry? For key digital technologies. And therefore, also in the recovery plan that was adopted this summer, we have insisted that at least 20% of all the money spent, which is the equal of 134 billion euros, should be spent on digitalization. And here, the whole debate about digital sovereignty and EU strategic autonomy, I think that is seen now as a positive agenda, because it's about the EU defining its own rules and making autonomous technology choices accordingly. It's also about diverse and safe supply chains. It's about enabling the EU developing technologies and put on the market European solutions that are competitive, enrich the alternative available globally, and diversify the sources of supply. So it's also about investing in key projects. Gaia X was mentioned. It's about data and cloud, micro and electronics and connectivity, batteries and clean hydrogen. So it's very important that the EU is increasingly being, as I said, assertive in defending its economic interest against partners that do not hesitate to discriminate against the EU and favor their national companies. Here, at the very end of the German EU presidency, the Commission will next week adopt two key projects. The first one is what we call the Digital Service Act, that will upgrade the liability and safety rules for digital platforms. The second pillar is what we call the Digital Market Act, that will address economic imbalances between platforms and business users. And then at the same time, digital is also increasingly on the agenda in our relations with all international partners. We hope that we will have a stronger cooperation with the incoming Biden administration. We are having a high-level digital dialogue with China. We will see it with India, with Japan, with a lot of countries where there will be fields where I think it's necessary also to focus on standards and values. And here we are focusing also on legislation in the first quarter of next year on artificial intelligence. We will come back to that. And then finally, also 2 words on digital identity. We are very happy also that the German presidency has put a lot of focus on this. It's extremely important that we at some point can be ready to have a joint interoperable e-identity which will be used across the EU. I think, and we hope, that at some point we will be in a situation where, for example, a young German person on her way to start an exciting new life in Ireland, even before she leaves Berlin, she has already used her e-ID to sign the lease of her new apartment in Dublin, and the same ID could work for getting the tax regulations to start her new job. this, of course, is still only an ambition right now, but I think this is one area where we need to see much more progress on the digital field. So thanks a lot for the invitation, and looking very much forward to the discussion.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Kim. As I understood it, it's necessary to address the question how Europe in general and Germany in particular can deal with technological innovations in such a way that we increase competitiveness and prosperity and can at the same time protect personal data without getting into international dependencies. Now it's Pia's task to help us out. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation and for the kind introduction. The question was whether the German EU Council Presidency had led to progress for the digital sovereignty of the EU. In fact, our presidency covers a far broader range of digital policies, but I promise I will do my very best to focus my answer on digital sovereignty. Before I start, let me briefly emphasize that our EU presidency has been a highly undigital one in view of the COVID-19 pandemic. And of course, this pandemic continues to have a profound impact on our societies today. During lockdown, many countries in Europe have relied on digital processes to keep our daily lives and our governments running. This is why we made the digital transformation a central focus of the presidency. The pandemic clearly illustrates how important it is for the public sector to offer well-designed and user-oriented digital tools and services to our citizens and businesses. And it has also the need to agree on standardized interfaces in order to enable interoperability of services in the different levels of the public stations. We must explore lessons learned from this pandemic, and we must actively support that it has given the transformation of the public sector. We have therefore used the opportunity of our presidency to initiate and successfully negotiate a joint member state declaration on value-based digital transformation in Europe. This declaration is entitled Berlin Declaration on Digital Society and Value-Based Digital Government, and it was signed yesterday at the ministerial high-level conference by all the EU member states. This declaration addresses many important issues like the need to strengthen digital participation and social cohesion, or the need for cyber ethics in view of hate speech and cyber mobbing, and also the importance of the rollout and the use of notified electronic identification means, and also it fosters interoperability and digital sovereignty of the public sector in the EU. And that's why I mention it here. And this is not only important due to the pandemic, but also due to the Schrems II, the ruling of the European Court of Justice on the invalidity of the US-EU Privacy Shield Agreement. So we have defined the strengthening of digital sovereignty as a core theme for our presidency and of the declaration, and we've taken important first steps towards a closer collaboration. For example, by signing this declaration, the member states agreed on a number of concrete actions to put the political principles of the declaration also into practice. So the EU member states will jointly work together towards agreements on requirements for technology providers and solutions in the public sector that are essential for digital sovereignty, and they will furthermore implement common standards, modular architectures, and when suitable, open source technologies in the development and deployment of cross-border digital solutions. And in addition, together with the member states, we have called upon the European Commission and other EU institutions in the Berlin Declaration to establish and promote platforms for data exchange and reuse of data, so-called data spaces, like those in the context of the European Health Data Space, and to establish a European alliance on industrial data and cloud with a view to building the next generation of secure, resilient, and energy-efficient cloud computing.
So, now I didn't hear a word. Is anyone going to hear me? I lost you, Pia. You can hear me, but now I can hear you again. Thank you very much. There were some interferences, but now hopefully hear you again.
Okay, summing up, let me briefly come back to the question lunch talk, has the German EU Council Presidency led to progress for the digital sovereignty of the EU? Marie Curie once said, the way of progress is neither swift nor easy, and the same holds true here. The progress we've made with regard to digital sovereignty of the EU is neither swift nor easy, but it's substantial, and it takes the form of concrete actions and agreements. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pia. As far as I understood it, is the means is the notion of technological or digital sovereignty a means of promoting the notion of European leadership and German leadership, and strategic autonomy is one of in the digital field is one of the main topics. So let's come back and go into detail. Kim, can you tell us something about, I want to come back to this, about the current top priority advancing the European digital sovereignty? The top priorities. What do you say?
As was said, this is not something you can do in one day. And now, as I said, the Commission will next week adopt two key proposals, which is actually not about technological sovereignty in itself, but the one on the Digital Market Act, which will focus on the biggest platform. Here you will see that there are no Europeans yet, and one of the big problems we have in Europe is basically not to have startups, but it's scaling up. So we need to go out and support small tech companies to scale up. But here, of course, we also need the vision. And that's why we had the Berlin Declaration, and therefore to both work on the data governance strategy, I think, which was adopted a couple of weeks ago, and this is going to be very important. And I hope also the on the EID would be important as well as the progress on Gaia X.
Pia, as you are a member of the German administration, and the administration is a big player in that digital field, can you tell me, we are strongly dependent on a small number of IT providers. German federal, state and local authorities define the common goal to holistically strengthen digital sovereignty in the German public administration. How did you do this, or has it still to be done?
Well, we are on the way, but of course it's still to be done. What we did was we did a strategic market analysis last year for the front-end software, and we found out, and it was not a surprise, but we found out we're strongly dependent on only a small number of ICT providers. Mm-hmm. And these dependencies result in pain points of varying criticality. For instance, limited information security or legal uncertainty are considered, of course, highly critical. So there is a strong commitment, a political commitment to do something against that, and we discussed it together with not only the federal administration, but also the local authorities and the Länder, the state. It's extremely difficult.
Yeah.
Okay.
For me as well.
I try to put it beside. So we discussed it with the Länders and the local levels together in the IT planning authority, call it the IT Planungsrat, and we found a strong solution for a German strategy for a federal cloud solution, for instance, for the whole public administration, and we for open software and a code repository which are to be in creation, let's say. So that's the German part of it. And we found out in Germany that, of course, we cannot come forward only on the federal level. We have to do it with the whole administration, and the same goes for Europe. We have to do it with all the member states together, because the situation is nearly similar in all of our states.
Pia, you've just mentioned the Berlin Declaration, already signed by, I think, an informal CIO meeting yesterday. So can you help us out? Can you explain where is it based on, build on? I think it's Tallinn, the Tallinn Declaration, and it's leading to Lisbon Declaration, but what is it all about? Can you go into detail? I think it's has something to do with value-based digital government, and it's in a way connected to it. Can you go into detail and help us?
Yeah, I could tell us a bit more, but it was not only signed by an informal CIO meeting, by a highly ministerial meeting, which is for us of an important difference. We combined with that had an informal CIO meeting on Monday, and we had the highly ministerial level on Tuesday, which was yesterday. Yeah. So there is a Tallinn Declaration from 2017 on which we build up. We does not want to put it away. We just want to add something to the Tallinn Declaration by the Berlin Declaration. And so we named it the value-based transformation of society and government. And it covers several different points, the whole range of digital policy, including the digital sovereignty of the administrations, but also about social cohesion, about digital participation of citizens. And it's important to all of us that it's on a value-based, human-centered basis on ethical values, not a technology-driven thing, but a value-based driven thing. That's the main sentence, I would say. And of course, there's a next EU Council Presidency of Portugal, and they focus more on the commercial aspect of digitalization, and they are planning a kind of Lisbon Declaration mainly on that.
So, thank you. Kim, let's come back to the status of future European digital sovereignty. Can you tell us something about this status? How far are we, and what can we achieve this year? No, the next month of the new year.
I would not expect there to be very much concrete progress within 1 month. As I said, we have huge challenge ahead of us in the sense that also during the COVID crisis, we have seen how much actually dependent we are of others, and we all know that there are in the digital field sort of a few very big providers, and you will not be able to build big ones like that in one during one council presidency. So we are in there for a long haul. What I think is very important is that we are feeling in the Commission, it's now one of the two main priorities in the Commission, but you're also seeing it increasingly in member states, and during the COVID, that an increasingly number of governments at the EU level have put digitalization at the very forefront. And here you need some concrete proposals. We are coming out, as I said, with two flagship regulation proposals next week on the Digital Service Act and the Digital Markets Act. And at the end of the first quarter of next year, we will come out with concrete legislation on artificial intelligence, which I hope can be some kind of a standard setter for how you treat the use of artificial intelligence at EU, at world level actually, and that could also help us to gain a more digital sovereignty.
Let me strengthen one point. It is EIDAS. You have had an evaluation of EIDAS. And my question is, has it been a success so far? Let me just in short explain what it is. The EIDAS regulation ensures that people and business can use their own national electronic identification schemes to access public services available online in other EU countries, and creates a European internal market for trust services, namely electronic signatures, electronic seals, timestamp, electronic delivery service, and website authentication. Yes, by ensuring that they will work across borders. So, has this evaluation you've made in the EU been a success so far?
I mean, if it's me you ask, I would say that it has the EIDAS regulation. It goes back to 2014, which means that it's it's 6 years old, and 6 years in digital world is actually quite a lot, and I think it has also shown its limit. In some member states, citizens are not offered a state-sponsored EID, and there are no clear incentives for the private sector to reuse notified EID schemes under the current framework, and therefore we simply need to develop it. So what it has shown is basically its limits, and also the need to progress. And I think in parallel you're seeing the large platform providers like Apple, Google, and Facebook increasingly offer convenient solution to identify and autonomously to buy online, and basically they buy your identity, and that's where I think it's so important that we do an EU ID to be able to do commerce and traveling across Europe. I think that's a very important thing, but at the same time also in a way where you protect your personal data. So again here, it's not something you do in 1 month's time, unfortunately.
I think you should do agree, Pia. But let me ask you a question. Elsewhere, you talked about the front-runner approach of Europe and the front-runner approach of Germany. And what can we do? Is the EU leading by example, and is Germany leading by example? What can we do to enforce this, to develop the art regulation standards for other countries, or for addressing future key technologies such as AI, we come back to this, or blockchain, and to provide orientation across national and continental borders in the EU? What can we do to be front runners?
Well, we try to lead by example, I think, as well. Germany as well as the EU try to do that, and of course we could always be better on doing what we try to do. Let me just add some sentences to the EIDAS and the EU ID thing. Kim mentioned already in the last answer. Our aim is with the EU ID thing, a common European legal framework with safeguard competition and which ensures interoperability of the existing identification means to protect the investments which are already made. And I say that because we have an electronic identity in Germany, and it is usable in all European member states already. So we want to strengthen the interoperability thing and the protection of the already made investment. And of course, we want to strengthen the use of publicly issued identities in the economic applications, as well as Kim said. So that was important for us to say that.
You're from the administration. How can we involve the private sector more than we do it right now? Because it's important to gain them in a way.
Is it a question to me?
Yeah. Because
okay.
A follow-up
well,
question.
When discussing standards, it's always important to do it together with the private sector as early as possible. So right from the beginning, to have them involved and to have them on board, and not to define standards in the end which are perhaps not practicable. So that's what we do. And that's, I think, is the main thing to do.
Maybe I agree completely on this one. If I may just say, for example, in Estonia, which are often mentioned as one of the front leaders, front countries on digital solutions, they use their ID. They develop it together with the banking sector, because everybody needs to do online banking basically almost every day. So by linking it to the banking account, they ensured that all citizens felt a need to use the EID every day. I think that was a very successful way of doing it together with the private business.
Okay. Thank you. Meanwhile, I want to encourage the audience to raise questions. I can hand them over to the speakers. You can do it via the YouTube chat. I encourage you, the audience, all you experts outside, to raise questions. So, come back to Kim. I just raised AI. it's among the weaknesses we have, because to develop such new technologies, AI, blockchain, all these new things, we are lagging behind the US and China, for example. So what can we do to be not behind all the time, to get up, to follow them in the path of sovereignty?
That's why the Commission published a white book on AI back in February this year, and that's also why we will come out with legislation based on what we call a high-risk approach in the first quarter of next year. It's correct that some are saying that EU is lagging behind US and China. It's not completely correct, in the sense that there's a lot of AI professors in living and working at universities and small companies and big companies in Europe. One of the key challenges at EU level is basically to scale up. Whenever an AI small company is having success these days, they are basically either being bought up by American companies or Chinese companies. And here we simply need to go together with public-private to be able to scale up, so to let them stay in Europe. I think that's basically the biggest challenge we have on AI. It's not the lack of patents or good ideas. We have a lot. If you look at AI in the automobile industry, there we are quite good. The Chinese are the best in facial recognition. I'm not so sure we will want to follow them on that one, but I think it's key to develop our own standards, and I also have the feeling that increasingly the Americans and other third countries are looking towards our standards for the use of AI, which could also help us develop a strong AI industry in Europe.
Come back to China. China leads the race on data collection and data access. And isn't there a danger? Because, looking at the corona pandemic, you mentioned already the coronavirus, big data analysis techniques are increasingly used for tracking and controlling and all that, and controlling the spread of disease, but as well people. And maybe isn't that a danger we have to face and to talk about? You mentioned yet that you will talk to the new Biden administration, but don't you have to face this problem and to mention it in a way in your talks with Xi and all the people from the Chinese administration?
We did actually, and Executive Vice President Vestager also had an important first meeting with one of the Chinese deputy prime ministers. But I think, Marco, Alexander, you wanted to answer this one as well, I could see on your face.
Some kind of moderation. Marco Alexander Breit from the Federal Ministry of Economic Affairs. Very, very good that he's going to join us now. He's going to interjection later on, I think, when you have answered all the questions. But Marco Alexander Breit was personal advisor to the head of Federal Chancellery Peter Altmaier, and was head of office of Annegret Kramp-Karrenbauer when she was Prime Minister of Saarland, of the Saarland. So, if you want to add something, Marco, you're welcome. If you want to do your interjection right now, because if not, then I'm coming back to Pia. But go ahead if you want
thank
to.
you. Actually, I was just showing up my fingers because I was talking to my wife. Nevertheless, thank you for the opportunity, and because I think it's a perfect time now to. There is one question that's underneath everything we are discussing, and this is what exactly is digital sovereignty. Yeah. And I would like to quote the Chancellor Merkel on this, because she said you need to understand that digital sovereignty, from our point of view, is not that we need to do everything by ourselves. We need to be able to do everything by ourselves. And if I get back to what Kim said before, then in the end, it's a question on how we can make sure that our standards and our regulation and our values, this is what Pia Kaga said too, can have a worldwide importance and impact. And I would say, okay, I'm obviously working in the Ministry of Economic Affairs, and I would say you sell standards and you sell values with good products. And if you want to have good products, be it AI algorithms, be it data applications, be it something else in the innovative world of digitization, then you need to have access to data. And if you need to have access to data, that itself doesn't solve anything. The value of data is multiple if you have data collaborations and people sharing data and working together on things like that. So by now, or as of now, we are in a situation where companies, organizations, science world is very reluctant to share data. Some of them have a trust issue, some of them have a business model issue, but nevertheless, we need to address this because we are in Europe in a situation where we have a huge amount of data and we have a huge amount of opportunities. But as Jorgensen said, we are just lacking the transfer from ideas to product. So I would say that we need to work on three things. The first thing is we need to inform companies, people, bright minds, science organizations, that they are actually sitting on the treasure, that data is a treasure that they can use. And when they are informed, we need to tell them, and this is obviously one of this is the business or something that the state needs to do. We need to tell them, okay, look, you can collaborate here and we will give you a framework, be it legislation or be it relations. We give you a framework of trust and a framework of sincerity and security that you can share your data with and work together on data sets, for example. And then the third thing, and even if you know, right, I have a treasure, I can work with others to multiple the treasure, then you ask, okay, but what's in for me there? And this is sometimes where you need to lower the entry barriers, and this is where exactly where funding comes into place. And I think we need to do this, we need to lower the entry barriers for data collaboration, and then we get good products out of it. And these products by themselves are resting on our European values, are resting on European regulation and legislation, and then we can compete in the worldwide scale. And when we are competitive, then we set standards. And when we're competitive, then we get sovereignty in the end out of that product. One of the projects that we are having in the Federal Ministry of Economic Affairs, Gaia X, addresses all these things as at the same time. We are building up an infrastructure, so you have a reliable and trustworthy infrastructure where you can share and process your data together. We are working on a governance set and set of rules, policy rules, and architecture of standards, so you have this trustworthy environment that I was talking about. And we are funding use cases, and we are funding collaborations of companies, of competitors too, and small and medium enterprises and startups. So look, you can work together in your domains, in your field of expertise, and you can really do something great and innovative here. Gaia X has a lot of traction. We rose from 22 members in September 2020 to now 181 in 1 month's time. So I cannot complain that we are lacking traction. We are having a huge momentum, and I'm very grateful that we are closely aligned to the Ministry of Interior Affairs of Pierre Kager and to the European Commission, Mr. Jorgensen, and that we can all work on this together. One of the examples that this collaboration had is the European Cloud Federation, which has been published 1 month ago. And this European Cloud Federation sets the regulatory steps for this collaboration in this and the next year. So thank you for the collaboration, and I think together we can work on innovative data services from Europe and from Germany and from our partners.
Thank you very much, Marco. I come back to Gaia X in a minute, but let me just ask a question. Aren't we, how strong are the international technological digital dependencies currently? How strong are they? And why is the EU concretely dependent on resources, subsidies, technological lead? Why is it so?
You're asking me?
I'm asking you, and then Kim.
Okay, so from my point of view, we are in the situation that we have a huge potential within Europe, but we are lacking this cohesive physical space that all these great minds, the great ideas, the money comes together, like Shenzhen, for example, like the Silicon Valley, for example. And we will never be able to set up something like that in a physical way because Europe is too diverse, too big, and has too many member states for this, because the Germans wanted to be in Berlin or Munich, the French ones wanted to be in Paris, the Italians in Florence. So you can see physically we won't be able to do it. We need a digital ecosystem, and then we can transform our weaknesses into strengths, and the strength is diversity. So this, my answer would be, Gaia X can give you this physical, this digital ecosystem where you can work on together.
Kim, the infrastructure has to be resilient, sustainable, democratic. Isn't that a task to fit? can we solve all the problems coming with it?
Actually, I think, I mean, apart from agreeing on what was just said, that we need to create some kind of a lot of centers of excellences on data and AI in Europe, and then to make them connect much better than we have done so far. But we are experiencing in the Commission a huge interest and a push by third countries for letting EU taking the lead in setting the standards. They are saying that there are only 3 who can globally have the size to set standards, and the 2 ones are the Americans and the Chinese. And if we don't do it, then nobody will be able to do it, but they want us to do it. So I think there is not only a huge interest and a much bigger political interest at EU level for doing that, we are also seeing it from a lot of third countries around the world that they want us actually to do it.
Make it to put in place a digital economic area that meets these criteria, as I mentioned before. So resilient, sustainable, democratic.
But that's also what was especially part of the Berlin Declaration. You need to do it in basically in our way, in a way where we of course are also now focusing on a more resilient both economy, but we are having also, for example, next week we are adopting also legislation on cybersecurity. Also here we need to be much more resilient, and we need to cooperate much more with companies, because we have also seen during the COVID crisis, and are still seeing it, how vulnerable the companies are. But at the same time, when it comes to AI and data, it all comes back to trust. So we need to do this, and we need to be resilient and to do it in a trustworthy way. So I think that's basically also where we have a huge advantage.
Very good. Kim, Kim and Pia, do you trust Microsoft, Amazon, Alibaba, who've joined the Gaia X project?
Well, spontaneously talking, I only trust my mother. So, a business trust or a professional trust is something different, I think. And you trust each other by knowing each other, by negotiation, by putting contracts on the table. You build a framework for trust, and that's the way what we are doing. We talk to each other. We often talk to each other in a very concrete manner. So, yeah, I would say there is something like trust.
But of course we also need rules, and that's why the Commission next week will adopt both the Digital Service Act and the Digital Market Act, where actually in the Digital Market Act, which is focused on the big platforms, here it will also address unfair trade practices that business users and consumers are exposed to when dealing with the large platforms. So we are also here trying to make regulation in a way so that consumers and businesses can trust these platforms. I think that's a very important legislation.
So let me put it into this question. Does there have to be a limit of participation? For example, that only companies headquartered in Europe have a seat on the board of Gaia X, for example? Kim, what do you say?
I mean, that's not part of our legislation. They will have to have a legal representative in Europe, so that you can basically take them to court if something illegal is happening. I think that's part of the proposal. What
Marke, you smiled as I saw. So what do you say? It's necessary to ensure that Europeans set the rules. And the Americans and Chinese are welcome to participate, but if they abide by them. So what do you say?
I would say
headquarters in Europe,
two things.
Yes or no?
The first thing is I do not need to trust either Microsoft or Alibaba in this framework of Gaia X. I need to trust the rules of Gaia X, and when they want to be part of Gaia X, then they need to adhere to the rules. So in the end, I do not need to trust the companies. I need to trust the Gaia X framework, and I need them to adhere to the framework. And then I have a trustworthy atmosphere and a trustworthy relationship. The second thing is there a necessity for only European companies to be in the board? I would say, as of now, yes. Why so? And it's written in the AISBL, the Belgian organization that has been funded rules as of now too. And why is that so? Gaia X has been in the beginning, and it's still one, a European effort for digital sovereignty and for data availability. And if I want to make sure that these goals are followed in the beginning of a process, then I need to be sure that the thinking that has been guiding Gaia X in the beginning cannot be diluted. And as we have, as I said, 181 members now, and they are members, but they have all the same rights. Nevertheless, we need to make sure that in the beginning, especially in the beginning, these European values are being followed. So that means for transitional time, at least, European companies need to call the shots. Nevertheless, the American companies, the Chinese companies, Japanese companies, and South Korean companies, for example, they are more than welcome if they adhere to the rules and if they adhere to the standards and values set by Gaia X. I am perfectly sure that the large majority of them is sincere about this, and they want to follow the rules. They want to set up the rules too. Nevertheless, there are some companies that I would say should not be members of Gaia X, but it's not up to me to decide that. The AISBL itself is going to decide on this when they finally have the signature of the Belgian king, which they are waiting for, because then they will be an AISBL in full effect. So we can wait for January and February to discuss these questions with the AISBL on certain companies.
So, yes or no, Marco, only companies headquartered in Europe can have a seat on the board, yes or no?
Yes, as of now, yes, and I would say now it's important that it is like that, but this could be changed from my point of view in the future.
So, Pia, as my German representative of German presidency, how can European identity, or so to say European standards, be guaranteed despite the inclusion of global players?
Despite the inclusion you asked for?
Yes. Guaranteed? Yes, we include them, we invite them and control them. Is that the way? Reminds me of Strategic Defense Initiative long ago. We are invited and then controlled. Do we want to invite them to control them? Is that the way we go?
Well, it's always good to embrace people so that they can't move anymore.
That sounds Chinese. Mao Zedong would have said it.
No. To take your question serious, I think standardization is not a matter of who is putting that into practice. Standardization is a matter of regulation, and the rules have to be fixed by the nation or the EU level. But then you have fixed rules, and then you have to make sure that everybody is behaving within these rules. And we could foster that by pronouncing rules for perhaps procurement, or by pronouncing rules for the putting into practice of services. And that's what we have to do. But it's not putting rules for special companies. That's not the way. We didn't, and we shouldn't do that.
Pia, do you think the Project Gaia X is a blueprint for additional future initiatives of the EU, or in the field of data analysis, big data, AI? Do you think so?
Well, I'd say so, yeah. Gaia X is about working together of different partners from different sectors and different nations, and putting different blueprints, blue angels into a project right from the beginning, I think is a good blueprint. And well, it could be a blueprint for other matters which we have on the table at the moment, like AI or data analysis or big data or whatever, yeah.
So to say, use established platforms for information sharing and collaboration and all that, yeah. Okay, now, sorry?
It does have an agile structure, an agile kind of putting things forward. So, yeah, that's the way it should be.
Take user requirements and user benefits into account. Is that what Gaia X is doing? And I have to take into account the questions from the audience. And This is why I have an iPad. Isn't it too late for the EU's own digital sovereignty? Aren't companies like Google already too powerful? Kim, what do you say? Too late for the EU's own digital sovereignties? Aren't companies like Google already too powerful?
I don't think it is, actually. I think one of the examples we have had during this discussion shows that there are still, so to say, room for EU and on AI, for example. This is basically only in the beginning, and we talked about data. Data is the new oil, so to say, and the data, and we have the most probably some of the best public data in the world are in the EU member states. So I don't think it's a lost battle, but again, we have to scale up, and DIAX is one example. And then, of course, we will also, since EU is a rule maker, we will also, with the new regulations, set rules for the big players on how they behave. I think that's also going to be important. So I would not say it's a lost battle, but we have to scale up. And again, going back to this scaling up, this is the biggest challenge I think we had at EU level.
Next question goes to Pia. Wait a minute. Commercialization, yes. How can the public sector make European ideas more actionable? Tyson Barker asked it. Pia, what do you say? The public sector.
When you talk about commercialization, you'd better ask my colleague from the Federal Ministry of Commerce. But,
no, I ask you, and then
so
Marco.
I can't really figure out what the matter of the question is.
No, because he says the public sector.
Say it again.
The public sector can make European ideas more actionable. I will come back to Marco with that question as well, but I want to address it to you. What can you say?
More
because
actionable?
Yeah.
Would say more practical?
Yes,
more
I would say more practical.
Perhaps it's a question of being more visible by the citizens in the EU. Because I think the things of course, the EU thing is a thing of framework of putting regulations for the whole market or for the whole political behavior in Europe. And it's a bit of a lack, I think, is the communication towards the citizens. Because Europe is far away from everybody.
Marco, do you want to add something?
That's perhaps a matter.
Yeah, thank you. Marco, do you want to add something?
To be honest, I didn't quite get the core of the question either, Tyson. So sorry for that. Nevertheless, I think, as I said, commercialization is of huge importance if you want to scale. This is number A, and the B if you want to set standards, because standards are sold by good products. And I give you one example so I can easily see this. This is the Apple iWatch. If I want to make sure that my data, health data, my data, how much I walk, how far I walk, the numbers of my heartbeats and all these things, there is a lot of people that would never give this this information to their own insurance companies. Nevertheless, they give it to Apple for free because they have the Apple iWatch. So Apple actually sold a standard. They didn't sell a product only, they sold a standard. And if we want to compete with this, or if we want to make sure that data is available to these to the companies and organizations that need them in the end, they need to sell products that people want to use, because then they can be sure that this is going to be accepted. So commercialization, I think, if it's done properly, if it's done within the framework of regulation, it's something that we should strive for.
Okay, Tyson Barker writes, it is a question of how to get basic research into IP that startups and European companies can capitalize. This is what he means. What do you say? Again, it's a question of how to get basic research into IP that startups and European companies can capitalize.
Yep. We are working on this from a lot of angles. There is AI trainers going around small and medium enterprises right now, showing them what kind of treasure they have with data, showing them that they could have partners within the science framework, within startups with small and medium enterprises. We are funding a lot of projects that bring people together, bring data together, to try to commercialize, to transfer research to the market. So the Federal Ministry of Economic Affairs addresses these issues with a lot of measures right now, and we still plan to do more but based on the money, for example, that's being given to us by for AI, for data, for 5G, 6G, and for especially use cases in automotive and other things. So we're working on that. And yes, I agree.
Thank you so much, Tyson. I hope this is good for you. And next question goes to Kim the diplomat. In your opinion, what has been the German EU Council Presidency's biggest achievement so far?
I hope we have it still ahead of us, because I hope you
We're not good enough?
we managed.
So,
I hope that, yeah, sure. I hope that actually we had it ahead of us, because I hope really we will get an agreement tomorrow at the European Council on the final compromise on the MFF, the multi-annual financial framework, and the recovery and resilience funds. I think this is basically needed, because that's also where we need, again, also to ensure that we have all these 134 billion euros that should be out working for digital projects in the real world. So I hope that we will see that by tomorrow, actually. So I would say that the biggest result is hopefully ahead of us.
Pia, what changes will projects like the Digital Service Act and Gaia-X mean for us citizens? Question goes to you. Again, what changes will projects like the Digital Service Act and Gaia-X mean for us citizens?
Yeah, well, that's a bit the matter I tried to put on the table with the last answer I gave. And it's really difficult to explain, I think, what's for the normal individual, what's the benefit to the individual, but the benefit to societies or the benefit to the nations, I think, is quite clear. And in an indirect manner, of course, all of us do profitize from initiatives like that.
Hey.
If I could maybe have just 2 seconds on this.
Yes,
what I hope the Digital Service Act will bring is actually that you as a consumer feel the same security for the product you're buying in a shop when you buy them online. We have had many surveys showing that if you buy toys on online, a lot of these toys are basically not living up to the standards. So the Digital Service Act is something that should make it sure that the products you buy online are as safe as the one you buy in an analog shop in Berlin.
Okay. I think last question. Carsten Schiefner, if GAFA is considered to be too big, there might be a chance to break them up. This has been discussed already, if I am not mistaken. This is what I don't know whether it's a question, but maybe you want comment on this. If GAFA is considered to be too big, there might be a chance to break them up. What do you say? Who is the one who is going to ask? I think
there has been a discussion inside, also ahead of the publication and the adoption of these 2 legislative proposals that the Commission will come out with next week. And in one of them, what is called the Digital Market Act, there will be a provision saying that at the very, very last option, you can force a company as a remedy to break up its business model, but it's a very last resort, and I don't think you would see that happen anytime. But it's a debate that is out there. You're also seeing it in the U.S. now. There's a vivid debate in the U.S. Also on whether some of them have become too big.
Dear audience, dear speakers, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for all the questions and the answers. And I'm happy that we had you. And it was our 17th edition of the cybersec lunch. I hope my promise had come true. That it has been pressing issues regarding digital security and discussed in a way that helps you, and that you get new insight and more insight. And I hope that you're willing and interested to join us again in the next cybersec lunch, the 18th edition. I hope, and hopefully not only a digital event. Thank you for being with us.